Hey, it's Merrick. Let's talk about HTML, because it's kind of a big deal. It's the main language your browser interprets to create all the amazing websites on the internet. It lets you structure your pages and, most importantly, navigate to other pages through clickable links. Now, it's not a programming language, but a markup language, since all it does is allow you to control the structure of your website. What I mean by that is, it lets you specify that something is an image, or text, or a title, or a list, or a form, or a link, or many other items that we'll get familiar with eventually. Okay, so HTML is a language. So you're probably wondering, how do you use it? Well, with English, you can speak it, you can write books with it. How do you use the HTML language? Well, you do it with an HTML file. Just like .doc is a Word file, and .mp3 is a music file, and .txt is a text file, .html is a file for the HTML language. So how do you get one of those? Well, it's actually quite simple. If you've ever used Notepad before, you can just open it up and go save. So I do Control S as a shortcut, but you can also go File Save and name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it Index. And the key part is that you add .html at the end. This will say that you're saving it as an HTML file type. So I just hit save, and I'm saving it in this folder that I have on the desktop. That's where I chose to save it. You can save it wherever you want. So now if I open this folder, you'll see that I now have an index.html file. And if I open it up, by default, it's going to open in Chrome. So if I just type hello here and save it again and then open it, you'll see that my hello is being displayed in Chrome. This is basically a fully functioning web page. Okay, so let's close this. Now, the reason that I'm calling this file index.html is because it's the most common name used for the main page of a website. For example, let's load up google.com. You see right now we have the main Google homepage. And if I just add index.html to the end of the URL, we're still loading that homepage. That's because when you type in google.com without the index.html, it is still by default going to index.html. Okay, so back to the file that we just created, the index page. Now, this is not typically how a developer would create a file or a web page. So let me introduce you to the first tool of the trade, the code editor. There are a variety out there, and I highly recommend Visual Studio Code. It's completely free, has a lot of great features, and it's developed by Microsoft, the company best known for their line of Zune products. So let's head over to Google and search Visual Studio Code. Now, some of you might be wondering, hey Merrick, why aren't you just adding the link into the description? Well, no, because you need to get used to Googling everything. As a developer, you're going to be using Google a lot, so we're going to get into that habit right away. So let's click on this first link right here and click on download, and then choose the right file for whatever operating system you're using. I'm using Windows, so I'll click on this one right here. Okay, so the download is complete, and now we'll just install it by clicking it. And you can just accept the agreement, leave everything as is, you don't need to customize anything, and install. Okay, and just leave this checked so we can launch it right away. All right, congratulations. You now have the best tool available to you as a developer. So now we can open up our HTML file here. So one way we can do this is by going File and Open Folder, and then we'll just find the folder where we save that file. So for me, I saved it in the HTML folder on my desktop. So let's just click on that and click Select Folder. So it's going to open up that folder, and all we have right now there is index.html. So if I click that, you can see the hello that we saved there earlier. Now, there's a few ways that we can create new HTML files. Like I was saying earlier, developers don't just create a notepad file and then rename it to HTML. Usually they'll just create it from their code editor. So the two ways we can do it are we can hit File and New File, and then it's automatically going to give us a new tab with basically a blank file that's unsaved. So we can just do Control S, and that will open up the save window, and then we can call it mypage2.html. And that's our second HTML file, and it created it inside that same folder. The other way we can create an HTML file is by clicking this little icon here, and that will immediately open up a new page and let you name it something. So we'll call this mypage3.html. So those are just two ways that you can create files. And it's a little faster than opening Notepad and saving it with the HTML extension. Now that you've been introduced to VS Code, let's come back to HTML. Remember how I said it's used to structure a web page? So I want you to think of it as a box filled with other boxes. Let's take YouTube's website for example. The entire page is one big box. Then we move inside. Up top, the area with the search bar, the YouTube logo, and your profile. This is another box. And then on the left side is a box with a bunch of links. Then you have a box for the main content. And then within that box, we've got individual boxes for each video link. And you get the point. A web page is basically structured as a bunch of boxes, or if we go by their official name, HTML elements. These elements are what make up the HTML language. And as I mentioned earlier, each element has a specific purpose. Now, there's a bunch of different elements you can use, but you'll often just be using the same ones over and over again. Let's take a look at the anatomy of an HTML element. We'll use the paragraph element, which is for, obviously, paragraphs. So first we have the opening tag. This is where the element begins. And then you have the closing tag. This is where the element ends. Notice the slash before the element name in the closing tag. And for the most part, almost all elements have both an opening tag and a closing tag. There are some exceptions, but you'll learn about them eventually. And another thing you may have noticed is that all tags start with a less than sign and end with a greater than sign. Next, you have the content. This is the stuff that we're labeling as a paragraph. So let's throw some text in there. Finally, elements can have attributes, which are made up of a name and a value. So for example, we'll give our paragraph the ID attribute, which should be used to identify a specific element. We'll give it the value, my first paragraph. Say we have another paragraph, and we give this one the ID, my second paragraph. Now, let's say we work together, and I give you a file with these two paragraph elements in it, and I want you to make an edit to it. I can easily just tell you to edit my second paragraph, and you'll know which one I'm talking about. Similarly, this ID can be used in code to refer to elements, and do all kinds of cool things with them. But we'll save that for later. I hope you're not tired of hearing me say that, I just really want to get the basics out of the way first. Okay, if we go back to YouTube and all those colorful boxes, the paragraph element could be used for a description of the video. But we're still missing some of the elements that are supposed to encapsulate this paragraph. There's the element around the entire video block, then there's the element for the main content, and then the element for the entire page. Every HTML web page has a few elements that are required by default. Even if you don't write them, they will be automatically generated. Let's take our example index.html file that we created at the beginning of this video and open it in Chrome. I'm going to show you a nice trick now. Right-click on the page and click on Inspect if you're on Chrome. Most modern browsers will have this feature, but they may call it something different. Make sure you're on the Elements tab, and you'll see that the HTML head and body elements have been automatically added, and the hello that we wrote earlier is within the body. These three elements make up the basic structure of an HTML page. The HTML element says that this is an HTML document. The head element contains some information about the page. For example, the title and description of the web page. And the body element is where the visible content of the page should go. As you can see, each of these elements have an opening tag and a closing tag. Okay, so let's go back to our index.html file and explicitly add these elements. We don't want to just let browsers automatically add elements for us because that's just bad practice and it could lead to unexpected behaviors. We always want to be in complete control of our code. Now let's paste a paragraph into the body of the document, which is where the main content should go. So to do this, we'll use the paragraph element. We can also add a title element into the head. So let's call this page My First Web Page. Alright, so let's look at the structure of our code so far. As you can see, the head and body elements are within the HTML element, and then our paragraph element is within the body element. This is called nesting, and it's the whole boxes within boxes within boxes concept. So the head and body are nested within the HTML element, and the paragraph element is nested within the body element. To visualize how these elements are nested, we use indents, which you can create by hitting the Tab key. So let's indent our elements so that they properly show where they're nested. We'll indent the head and body once, and then we'll indent the paragraph once more. Now our code is much more organized and we can easily tell which elements are within which other elements. Okay, there's one more thing that we need to add. We have to tell the browser what version of HTML the page is written in. Without it, you may get some odd behavior and you definitely don't want that. We can do this by adding doctype HTML. Even though this looks like an element, it's actually not an HTML element. It's more of just an instruction. Let's open up our page again. You can see our paragraph is there, and if you look at the top, you can see our title, My First Web Page. But it's not a really cool website yet, right? It looks pretty boring. Well, the topic for the next video will be styles. It's what developers use to position elements in the right spots and make them look fancy with colors, backgrounds, and other things. Thanks for following along. If you learned something, please give this video a like. And if you want more content like this, please subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.